Hey everybody, we've got another great show for you. It's a Tuesday night, and we're back after a long weekend. And many of you are probably not wanting to watch a debate tonight. You're not going to have one here on the channel. It's going to be a lot of fun talking about comic art, and with the gentleman that I've only emailed with before. Never gotten the opportunity to speak to Royce in person, but tonight I will, and hopefully some of you. No, I won't call him Vizio, Marcus. I think I said that in my. The show a couple weeks ago, and then I corrected myself. So I will not do that. It's Viso. So let me bring Royce in here, just so we can get his name squared away. Hey, Royce.
Hi.
Yeah, when I put together a calendar of upcoming events and chats and things, and I showed it off on the CAF update. And I think when I first wrote it, I wrote down Vizio, and clearly that was not right. But I corrected myself last week. But Marcus never misses a typo. So,
You're not the first person, believe it or not, to call me that.
well, that sounds, I'm used to seeing that, right? There's a television manufacturer, I think, or something that's close to that. And yeah, Viso. It's not a name that I think I've ever said before. So welcome to the show. I assume you've seen a few interviews in the past, right?
Yep, I've watched a couple. It's a lot of familiar names because, we're all in small circles in this hobby.
That is very true. And I neglected to welcome any. I saw Dave was here first. Dave Kopecky, he's a regular around here, and he was the first person to leave a comment tonight just to get things started. But yeah, so welcome to the show, Roy. So you were telling me this is how do you carve out a new man cave in your home? How does that happen? Did some kid move out or something, and you get a space?
No. Well, we bought a house a couple years ago, and the plan was that I would take over the garage, and the garage was too small and had all the laundry stuff in it. And the last thing you want in your man cave with a bunch of artwork and comic books is plumbing. So we built out a tough shed.
Oh, well, that's good. So you actually made a space for your man cave and all the collectibles that you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we made sure to get a place with a big enough yard at least, so I could build one out.
So all right. I'm gonna go. I want to see what's the stuff on the back wall. Looks like
I've got some He-Man going on back there. Where are we going? And there's the comic wall and guitars, and there's my darkness statue in my alien corner. And I've got a crow corner over there with a bunch of other vintage stuff and just other things I enjoy. And the only thing that hasn't made it up yet is the comic art, but it is a work in progress. So if you look over in my shelves, those big black books, that's kind of how I keep my collection right now.
Those are your iToys?
Those black books right under the statue there. That's the art collection. I got one in each one of these big shelves.
Oh, that's not bad.
Well,
the art is always the last thing to get taken out and put on the walls. I mean, it was the same thing here when I moved to Florida. What are you going to do, right? It's the last thing you want to start doing is pounding nails in the wall.
Well, I got to figure out the big things in the way first, see what room you have to play with. And I have some to play with. I would love more, but, I'm thankful for what I have.
Yeah, very good. Well, Tim Guerrero just wanted confirmation. This is the new man cave, and it definitely is. So you have a lot of long boxes in the back, too.
Yep, I've got a wall full of long boxes. One of my problems is I overdo the things I collect. I always have, and I probably always will, and I never get rid of any of it. So it just kind of amasses. And now that I have my space, I know where I have to stop because I'm not going to get any more space.
Well, you never know. Maybe you can add on to the addition, right? No, not going to happen.
Able to afford that.
Well, you're up against the property line already. All right. Let's see. What was it? I saw a question out there. Well, it wasn't a question. Number one Marvel fan wanted to know if I was doing any fundraising shows. We are not number one Marvel fan. I know Bill Morrison is doing some stuff out there, but we try to be like Switzerland here on the channel and just try to not ruffle any feathers on any political side. But Royce, so you're on the West Coast, right? We were talking, before we got started. So you're skipping dinner to hang out and do this interview.
Yeah. I'll grab something after. This is something I don't get to do every day. It's harder to, stick the wife with the kids. So she's the one you have to apologize to later.
Well, here, I'm going to make sure I get I know I've got your gallery linked in the description, but I'll put it in the chat just so everybody's got it as well. So while we're talking, anybody can head over to your CAF and see your collection, because you do. I mean, I didn't bother to take a look and see how many total pieces you have in your CAF, but it's got to be close to 2,000 pieces up, right? I mean,
last I looked at, and I use CAF as the tool to see how many I have because I scan everything. I was up over 2,800, believe it or not. I have so many that CAF won't display all the names of the artists anymore.
Oh, that's right. You were the one that messaged me about that. Yeah, we had to stop. I think we put a cap on it. It was originally Cool Lines that had broken the rules on that one. They had put so much art into their CAF gallery, from so many different artists that we were at, and this was years ago, right, when our database server maybe wasn't as robust and maybe the programming wasn't as great as it could be. So I think we put a hard count in there where we're like, we're just going to stop counting at this point, and showing it. And yeah, I remember you sending me that screenshot with the long scrolling list of things. So yes, so you have somebody with some artwork who, let's see, Joshua Williamson is the last one on the list. So you must have a name or two after that.
Oh yeah, there's a couple. Scott
I'll
Young.
ask Morgan about it. I totally forgot. I've never, gosh, that was like a year ago. It feels like when you brought that to my attention.
Oh yeah,
I never.
Something to put on the to-do list.
Yeah, we have we have a long to-do list these days. It is uncool, Rich. Well, you know how it goes. Sometimes you can't program for everything. There was a point in time where we actually put a count beside the artist list. But again, it was like sites like or galleries like Cool Lines or something, or yours, where there's a ton of names to have to count, unique numbers and everything, and we just kind of gave up on that. It looked good when people didn't have 2,800 pieces of art in their gallery. So maybe someday in the future. So give me the scoop, man. So clearly you've been collecting for a long time. You've got plenty of toys that I'm assuming are from your youth. I see on the back wall, but
most of them are not actually from my youth. There's only a couple. I started rebuying some of them, later on, like the He-Man toys in the back are actually those Origins. I started buying them because I wanted to share them with my own kids, and once in a while I'll bring them in here and pull some down, and they absolutely love it. And they're 4 and 6, and they now love He-Man. So next stop is going to be Ninja Turtles, and we'll go from there.
That's solid.
I'm just capturing nostalgia all over the place.
Well, that's awesome. But they have to come into the man cave, or do you take them out, and put the play sets out there for the kids to play with?
I give them some for them that they have in the house, but I have some in my room that I'm either planning to give them at some point or just keeping them in here so that when they come in here, they have something that they can touch. Because as you can imagine, I don't want to touch much.
No, not at all. I assume you must have a lock on the door.
Yes, definitely. Security system, locks, everything.
Nice move. Yeah, I didn't see any windows when you were panning around.
Windows.
Well, that's the way to do it, definitely. So Tim says he wants to hear the origin story. So sure, we can kind of go back. I mean, so what kind of got you into comics and toys and it's definitely I know one of the things we're going to learn today is a lot about Darkness as a character, of which I have very little. I missed the 90s pretty much, so I wasn't collecting comics, and Darkness is a character that I don't know a lot about. So give me the scoop.
Well, when I first started, when I was young, I think I got a couple random comics here and there, and I never would read them. I would just kind of look through the pictures, and I thought that was, they were cool for what they were. And I had a couple really cool comic book stores around me. So when I started, when I was old enough to go out on my own and just walk around, those would be the stores that I would just go and look around in. And the ones that usually would catch my interest the most would be like the Alien and Predator comics. I was more into creatures than I was into superheroes. And I would just walk in once in a while and check them out. And I thought it was really cool, just to see them. And then I think the first time I ever bought any that I actually read was my mom. I was with my mom and she took me to a garage sale, and she said I could buy a couple comics. This guy had like a million long boxes just like in a circle around his garage. And the first thing I looked for was Aliens, and I found Aliens versus Predator, and he had the whole set of like 5 issues, and so I bought those, and that was the first one I actually read. And I was so happy with just those 5 comics. I didn't even look for anything else while we were there, and I still have those. And it was the first one I just loved. And then I was not really a comic book fan still, but I would still go into the comic book stores. And one day I went in, and at my local store they had a promo poster for The Darkness, and I just hadn't seen anything like it before. And it had that cool, super detailed armor, which I just always thought was cool. You know, if you look at the Alien and Predator, they've super detail, all sorts of little things. And then he was surrounded by all these little demons. And so I was just sold, right away. And so I bought the poster right off the wall and started asking when, the book was coming out. And when it came out, Mark Silvestri actually had a signing at the local comic stores, the Golden Apple. It's a really big comic store in LA, even still. And he was there with the inker and colorist. And I got my first issue signed. And that was my big introduction into being an actual comic book fan. So I started buying those nonstop. I started getting the Witchblade because she's connected to the Darkness. Darkness 0 was Witchblade 10. And then I started buying all of Top Cow's books because I wanted to get whatever I could that was kind of surrounding that one character. And then, from there you start to recognize some artists and some writers, and new things come out, and you start to expand from there. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
So did you stick within the Top Cow universe as far as the comics go, or did you branch
I
out?
never left the Top Cow universe. I did branch out. I have a lot of other things that I read now. The ones I steer clear of the most are honestly the Marvel DC books. There are Marvel DC books that I like, but every time I've tried to actually jump on a title, they would ultimately do one of those massive crossovers, and I would read, like, when the New 52 came out, for example, I jumped onto all the titles, and there were a good majority of them that I actually really liked, but I couldn't sustain it, and when they would do these big crossovers, they wouldn't do, like a joint story that would combine these characters. They'd have like the Batman crossover, and issue 1 would be in Batman, and issue 2 would be in the Dark Knight, and issue 3 would be in Batman and Robin, and issue 4 would be in Batgirl. And if there's one book out of all those that I'm not reading, I just don't want any part of it. And then they started canceling some of the ones I really liked. Like, I really loved Blue Beetle. They canceled it. And there were other ones too. So in the end, I was just like, you know what? I'm over this. I can't keep up with it. And so I stick mostly with my more independent, my Aliens, my Predators. I love the Ninja Turtle books. I still love all the Top Cow books. I jumped on Cross Gen when they were out. I loved Cross Gen. I miss them. So yeah, things like that.
So it seems kind of the non-traditional spandex heroes is really your I don't know, your lane, right? Because at the end of the day, you're talking about Aliens versus Predator, and the costumes are important. If you're talking about Cross Gen, Darkness, Witchblade, all of that is definitely outside of what the popular comic books would be. But still, I mean, they had a huge following. They still have a huge following. So, but that's cool. So how did this this passion for these alternative books effectively lead you to collecting original comic art?
I think my first comic art was probably the free sketches at a con.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Comic-Con, and it wasn't so hard to buy tickets back then. You just kind of show up and get a ticket, which was great. And at the time, like, I didn't even know you could ask for a sketch, but all these artists and writers were there. I would bring a bunch of books. Nowadays, if I go, I don't bring any books because I don't want to carry them for the whole week. But back then I would go and I would get them signed, and then they would do sketches. And honestly, that was the most amazing thing. I was like, I can get a hand-drawn piece of art as a souvenir. And I thought it was amazing. And so that got me started. And I would walk away from those, those conventions with like 10 sketches a day. And I still have them. I've never parted with any of them. So that's kind of where it started.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, a lot of people start there, or, convention sketches in general that they're paying for. But you were kind of on the free sketch train. I mean, a lot of artists did, even in the mid to late 90s and the early 2000s, they still would do free sketches, with the advent of eBay and people really realizing the value of those pieces. That didn't last for too long. But
well, I was there at the right moment because I was really able to enjoy the benefits of that. But it worked. It made me a fan, and it got, once you start getting these things and you start to really love them, that's when you start, putting a little bit of money into them. And a little bit of money eventually becomes more money. And you find yourself supporting these artists that who were really cool to you. Some of the ones who were really cool to me early on are the ones that I still follow today. There's something about fan service. Even if someone like James O'Barr is a good example. He sells artwork, but he'll sit there and do his quickie sketch for you and talk to you for 5 minutes. And that does a lot to keep you as a fan, I think, and keep you coming back. So, and there's a lot of artists that really won me over that way.
Yeah, James is a great guy. I've had lunch with him a couple times when we were doing the Big Wow show on the West Coast and whatnot. I really, really like him a lot. I've only gotten one piece from him ever, but yeah, for the people who love The Crow. I mean, he's a fan favorite. I love his style.
I have a couple in my list to share.
Yes, that is true. I was making the slides earlier. I was happy to see those in there. Hey, before I lose the question here from Tim, he wanted to know if you actually had any cross-gen art.
I do have cross-gen art. I have a bunch of sketches because back then, CrossGen had a presence at Comic-Con, and they would all do free sketches. So I have a bunch of the free sketches, and I have a handful of pages. They're not on my list that I have to share, but they do have their own gallery in my Comic Art Fans gallery that you can browse. And there's some really great ones in there. I have a lot of love for them.
There you go, Tim. Number one Marvel fan mentions that the old days of free signing and free sketching was good and bad. Guys would have 100 books and lines could get insane. So now that people are paying, obviously the lines are a bit shorter. But yeah, that's true. I mean, I do recall those days. I think that a lot of those things contributed to lesser space for artists and artist alleys sometimes, and I think it spawned the whole artist rep, an agent sort of thing, which kind of cut down on people bringing 100 books and dropping them in front of an artist and eating up 20 minutes of their time. So yeah, that's Erlander says he wants to know about how you temporarily broke CAF. I think he means with the artist list.
Oh,
it's not a temporarily broken situation. It's a permanently broken situation. but one we can overcome, I'm certain. But I've made a note to talk to Maureen about it. So beyond that, because you have a lot of published pieces. I mean, you're buying these, or getting free sketches from artists. I mean, what kind of got you into the published purchases? Because that's always a big step for any collector. Not many collectors start buying published pieces, or expensive pieces. A lot of them where you did.
Well, I think honestly, the biggest things that really got me going on it were luck and also just being a genuine fan, because I got really lucky early on to where people just hooked me up, to be perfectly honest. And there's a couple stories in the pieces that I am going to share about how that happened. But once I got a couple of them, I started looking on eBay. Sometimes I would reach out to people on social media to ask about favorite artwork. And as I've progressed to the point where I am now, I've just really kind of searched for my favorite characters, like on an ongoing basis. And if I see it and I like it and I can afford it, I go for it. And I really appreciate those people who curate their collection and have just enough to have that one thing, but I've just never been that guy. So everything I've bought, I've just built on. I've continued building on it. I've kept all of it. And I think honestly, that's one of the things that the artists that I follow have learned about me. They know I'm not going to flip a piece. They know that if it's coming to me, I'm going to appreciate it and keep it. And that's just led to people being even cooler to me. And I'll get a good discount sometimes. And I've had a relationship with Top Cow, which has also kind of led to me connecting to a lot of the artists. And then also going to the conventions, those people who hooked me up with free sketches a lot of times, I would keep going back to, and I would build a rapport and I would buy stuff, and so, things just became more available. And the more you were friendly and genuine with these people, the more they'd hook you up. And I just, I think I'm really lucky and fortunate to have, gauged my, relationships.
Mhm.
And it's really kind of supported this terrible habit I have.
Yeah, well, we all can relate, of course. So, I mean, so you're saying, have you ever sold anything? I guess. I mean, it's
I've
you haven't
sold
sold much.
probably as many as I can put on my one hand.
Mhm.
So I sold an Eric Basildua sketch, and I got to know him when I was at Top Cow, but I'm not super into the more risque art. So I had one and didn't feel tied to it. And when someone inquired, I said sure. I actually just recently someone reached out about a piece in my gallery that I got kind of as an add-on. Like I bought something on eBay and they had like a couple other pieces, and I added them for not too much, and someone made an offer and it was a good offer, so I took it. So but it's really, really hard for me to part with the majority of my collection. Like anything that's the darkness or the alien and predator, like someone's really gonna have to twist my arm. It's really gonna be hard. It's literally out of my 2,800 pieces, I've maybe sold 3 or 4. That's
Right.
it.
Now, do you get inquiries on some of those pieces that you wouldn't sell for, for a mint?
Occasionally I'll get one and I'll just say no. If it's one of those random pieces that I'm not super tied to, I'll be honest with the guy and I'll tell him. I'll say I generally don't sell art from my collection, but if you make an offer I can't refuse, I'll consider it. But I'm not one to haggle. If I don't want to do it, I'll just say no, thank you, and please don't be offended. And I remember there was one guy who reached out for a piece I had for it was an 11 by 17 board that
Mhm.
had like 4 trading card artwork pieces on it, featuring Ghost Rider, and I like Ghost Rider. But I don't love Ghost Rider as much as some of my other pieces. And I said that to him, and he offered me, I think, like 10 times what I paid for it. And I was just like, well, I will gift wrap that up for you and ship it right on over.
Free.
And,
Yeah, that doesn't happen too often. I mean, you
no,
never know, because one person's ridiculous offer is another guy's, they're just trying to fill things, out from that perspective. And it's, and nobody likes to, well, some people have no shame and they'll embarrass themselves with a low offer even when you're asking for something like that. But that's just kind of the nature of the hobby. We all want to try to get a deal, but at the same time, yeah, it's a difficult thing to do. But I get that. I think that's really respectable that you really haven't sold that much art. There aren't many collectors that can say that. I mean, 5-10% have been able to hold on to 95% of their collection over a 10, 20, 25-year period. It just doesn't happen too often.
Mm-hmm.
Joel, who I guess is a friend of yours because he's been commenting a little bit. He said you're still planning on giving him that Vader Darkness piece, right? Giving it should have been in quotes.
Yeah. No. He can have it in the will, maybe. That's about it.
So
there's a story behind how I got that one too. I'll get to it when we get to look at my the pieces I have to share. I'll share. It kind of will continue onto that one.
All right, and Tim mentioned, is that a Joe Benitez piece, Joel? I'm not sure which piece he's referring to.
He's talking about the one that the Benitez Darth Vader piece that
Joel's talking about. Okay. James Henderson's been in the hobby for 30 years and says that he's only sold around 10 pieces. Again, that's very admirable and not the norm, especially if you have thousands of pieces in your collection.
Yeah, I just happen to have the binder that the piece that he's talking about is in, so I can show you what he's talking about.
Sure.
So there it is. There we go.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. Well, Joe Benitez is my absolute #1 favorite artist. And luckily, I've been able to make friends with him over the years. But this particular piece was gifted to me by Joe Weems. So I'll
Weems
get to that.
did do a lot of work with the Top Cow team, right? I mean, he was kind of the go-to guy for a lot of those creators. So that's cool. Joe's actually going to be at OAX this year too. I've only talked with him on live streams before, so I'm looking forward to actually seeing him in person. But he's a great guy, obviously, and his tenure in the hobby is there's not a lot of inkers who are actively working who have worked as long in the business as he has. He's pretty awesome. But that's cool. So how did that happen? You say Joe got that.
So well, when it's laid out in the story from the pieces I sent you. So when
we got to keep it chronological. Well, maybe we should start looking at artwork because I know you sent a few more than we. I think we got like 22 pieces here to look at tonight.
Yeah, I could have loaded on probably 20 more, but it's hard to narrow it down.
Well, when you have 2,800 pieces that you love that you're not letting go of, trying to whittle that down to less than 1%, this is going to be difficult. All right, well, let's see where we're going to start here.
So this is a Tales of the Darkness piece, and it's by Dan Fraga. And I put it on here because I believe that this is the very first actual page of art that I ever got. And this is one of those situations where I got really lucky because, after I went to that comic book signing with Silvestri, and I kept going to, that comic book store. They had a booth at the LA Festival of Books, and they asked me if I would be willing to help out at the booth. And I said, sure. And so I was really excited when they had an artist there. And at this point, I was still relatively a new fan. I didn't have a lot of name recognition or anything like that. But he had me and this one other guy just kind of help at the booth and manage the line. And he promised we would get a chance to go and see the artist. Well, the artist had to leave and we didn't get to see the artist. So the artist gave the comic book guy 2 pages of original art to gift to me and the other guy. So one piece was an X-Men page and the other piece was this page. And I don't even remember what the other X-Men page is, but I remember me and the other guy, we didn't know each other. We just looked at each other. And the thing is I really wanted this page because I was a diehard Darkness fan. And he really wanted the other page because he was an X-Men fan. But we didn't know that until we actually looked at it. So I got to walk out with the page that I really wanted, and I was so happy. And he got to get the page that he really wanted, and he was so happy. And I don't think I got to meet Dan Fraga after that because I didn't meet him there. I didn't get to meet him again for like a decade. And then I had to tell him the story of how I got this page, so that was really fun.
That's funny. So you guys at least talked about it. You didn't flip a coin, and you ended up both being happy with the coin flip, right?
No, we both looked at each other and we were like, "Well, which one do you want?" And I don't remember who said what. This is like 20 years ago, and
Mhm.
I just remember we were both on the same page in the end. We were both very happy.
Well, that's a great place to start. So the first piece you got just for putting in some time at the end.
Yep, and it just happened to be featuring my absolute number one favorite character. Who knew? I didn't even know that Dan had worked on the book because, like I said, I didn't have name recognition. I just would buy a comic book and read it.
Mhm. Well, that's awesome, man. That's a great place to start. Not many people are going to get a gift for their first published piece of art, and at least I don't think I've talked to anybody who has. So
Yep, it
that's
was
awesome.
all downhill from there.
Now
Uh,
this one's I'm a huge Aliens fan myself. So when I saw this piece, I was like, I'd own this page. It's that cool.
so this one I actually found on CAF.
Really?
Uh,
Huh.
yeah, a guy had it in his collection, and I'm a huge Alien Predator fan. And this is a page from Alien versus Predator Zero. And if you can remember, I was saying that that was one of the very first comic books I actually read and loved that made me a comic book fan. So I looked at the guy's gallery. It's probably the only page from that book I actually found on CAF at the time. This is a really long time ago. And he didn't have anything else like this in his gallery. And I just asked him, would you ever be willing to sell it? It said not for sale on there. And he said, it doesn't really fit in my collection. So yeah, I could let it go. And he let it go for not a lot of money. I think it was under $200 somewhere. And in the last couple of years, they've had a couple pages from Alien versus Predator pop up. They've gone for like over 1,000, 2,000. So I don't know what this thing's worth now, but it's a prize in my collection just because it's from one of my absolute favorite comic books of all time.
Well, it's a very cool piece. A lot of art has changed hands on CAF over the years,
Mhm.
and that's a cool thing. So I'm glad you got to add this one. It's a very nice, really nice page.
Yeah.
What year was the art done? Do you know?
I want to say it was like 1990, but I could be wrong.
Okay, I was trying to look
That's
through your CAF gallery for it, and I couldn't find it, but I know it's got to be in there somewhere. Cool. No, that's a good one. Then let's see where we go from here. Now you have Predator and Alien.
yeah. So this is something that kind of popped up a little more recently. I'm in a lot of fan groups on Facebook, and I'm in some Alien Predator fan groups. And one of the friends that I've made gave me a lead on this one guy who was an artist on one of the Kenner comic books that came with the toys. I still have that's one of the part of the toy collection that I still have from when I was a kid, and they all came with these comic books and I loved them. And the guy had the entire issue for the Scorpion Alien, and he sold them to me for a pretty reasonable price. Like, it really wasn't that much compared to what I think it could have been for something that was 20 years old. And it lit a fire under my ass and I started writing to all the other guys who worked on those comic books. And my favorite one of those comic books was the only one that had the Predators in them. It was the Alien and Predator issue. And the guy that drew it had half the pages. And he sold them all to me for, again, a very reasonable price. And this is one of those examples of getting really lucky. So this is just a throwback to my childhood. There's certain boxes to check when you're looking at things to see if like how amazing it is. And one of those things is a favorite character, one of those things is a cool piece, and one of those things is just pure nostalgia. Anything that can check boxes like that is just like an amazing thing. It stands out above the rest. So this is 2 out of, I think, 6 or 7 pages that came out of that issue. And they're just a really good example of what is in there. I mean, they're amazing. They're really great.
Yeah, the artist on this one is Brandon McKinney with Carl Kessel inks.
Yeah, and one of the very first sketches I ever had at a comic book store, which is at the Golden Apple again, was from him. And I didn't realize that until, I started looking into this, these books after, my friend gave me that lead, and I'm looking at who drew all these books, and I'm like, oh, I think I have a piece from him. And I do. I have a quickie sketch from like this independent little comic book he did 20 years ago. And I just hit him up on Facebook and said, "Hey, do you still have any of these?" And he did, and he hooked it up. It was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best art people add to their collections are the ones that they had to go and do a little bit of work for, right? Track down an artist or an inker.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, with a franchise like Alien and Predator, where it's a comic book and movies and toys, you got to be shocked when these artists still have pages 20 years later and can actually find them. I mean, it's amazing.
yeah. No, I get it. I do hear a lot of stories about the artists just uncovering things that they didn't know they had. I mean, it does happen with a lot of frequency. So tell me about this piece.
All right, so this one's got a silly little story behind it. So when I first was into comic books and I was getting really into Top Cow, they had a message board, and I was trying to figure out what name I could have on the message boards. And one day I was going through previews, and I swear I remember this. I probably dreamt it. I've even asked Mark Silvestri about it. He doesn't know what I'm talking about. But I swear I saw a necktie, of all things, of Daffy Duck dressed up as the Darkness. And it had the other Darklings as the other Looney Tune characters as the Darklings as shadows in the background. So on my message board handle, I decided to call myself the Duckness, which is what I vaguely remember being on this necktie that probably never existed. And when I first started going to comic book conventions, I was in line for my very first sketch, and someone started talking about how they did sketch themes. And I was like, oh, sketch themes, that sounds like fun. What could I do? And I decided to ask people to draw me their character, whatever it was, portrayed as a duck. And so I have like 20 duck sketches. And I was trying to learn how to do comic book coloring. And so after they would do me this duck sketch that was just pure silliness, I'd go home and I would try to color it. And I would come back to the same convention the next year, and I'd have printouts of my coloring practice, and I would gift it back to the artist that drew me the sketch. And they're always asked for things, but they're not often given things like that. So I kind of got this reputation of being the duck guy. Um, and even when I go to Top Cow, some of the Top Cow guys still call me Duckness. And one day I got a sketch from James Silvani, who's the artist on this piece. And I asked him for the Darkness, and so he did the Darkness, and his character at the time was Darkwing Duck. So we put a little Darkwing Duck shadow in the back, and it made me think of the necktie. And so I asked him to, for a commission, and I told him the whole story I just told you, and he drew this for me. And it is the closest thing I have ever seen to what was in my mind that I probably dreamt up of this necktie that I don't think ever existed.
Every time Mark Silvestri sees you, he thinks about this necktie.
No, I only asked about it once just to see if it existed, and he didn't know what I was talking about, and I don't think I've ever brought it up again. But let me show you really quick, because I have that right here also. I actually have the little book of some of the little coloring things that I did, that I would take back, because I would make one for them and then I would keep one. This is the very first coloring piece I ever did. This is not a duck, but I did that sitting next to Steve Furco at the studio, at the Top Cow studio. I'm getting there. Don't worry. but like these would be examples of ducks. So I have a whole bunch of cross-gen ducks because they used to do a lot of free sketches, and this was just me trying to learn the tools of comic book coloring. And so I have a whole bunch of these. I think that Ghost Rider one might have been the very first one I ever got. That's Trent Kanuga who did that one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. See me how I shoehorn some extra artwork into my video.
Uh-huh.
So,
Wow.
anyways, I have a bunch of these. This is my
We
very
need
first
to retire from looking at art. What's that?
This is my first duckness sketch that I ever got. That was from Eric Basaldua.
Oh yeah, I like his work. He's used to drawing at pretty women, not darkness.
Yeah. So I had a brief internship at Top Cow a long time ago. The way that kind of happened was, my Top Cow guy knew that my big thing was Top Cow. And he gave me passes to the Tomb Raider movie for a sneak preview. And Tomb Raider at the time was, the comic book was produced by Top Cow. And so he says, when we're at the movie, he's like, you see those guys over there? Those are the Top Cow guys. You should go talk to them. So I went and I talked to Vince Hernandez, who's with Aspen now, but at the time he was with Top Cow. And this is my dream, just to if I could have chosen a dream job, I would have been like to work at Top Cow, right? But I was a full-time student. I had other jobs. So I asked him, can I have a tour of the studio? It's right here in LA. He's like, oh yeah, sure, come on down. So he invited me over, and I started looking around at the studio, and it was so cool. It was a big space, and like they had an artist pit, which I'm sure some of the viewers have heard about on from Wizard magazine and stuff, where the artists would all work together, and then like some of the bigger guys would have like their own private art, offices. And I got to meet like Mark Silvestri and Michael Turner and some of those big names. And I noticed there was just a bunch of stuff around. There's like big messes everywhere. And I asked Vince about it. I was like, what's the deal with all this? And he says, oh, it just gets a little hectic during convention season. And so we just had, we haven't gotten around to putting all that away. And I say, so, if you guys ever just needed a hand cleaning up or moving stuff around, I'd be happy to just kind of help out. And he asked me straight out, so do you want to be an intern? And I told him, I was honest at the time. I was like, I don't have time to be an intern. I'm a full-time student. I have this and that. But if you ever just needed help once in a while, I'd be happy to help. And he's like, yes, you want to be an intern. So he labeled me intern, which gave me free access to the studio that makes my absolute favorite comic book, that had Mark Silvestri and Michael Turner. Eric was there, but he was still new at that point. He was doing like background inking assists, at that point. And I got to meet all like the editorial stuff. And basically I got free entrance to my, to what was my fantasy place to go and visit. And most of the time when I went there, we had Halo tournaments. That's how we spent the time. Nobody ever gave me a single thing to do. I was just there kind of enjoying being there and seeing what happened and being a fly on the wall. I got to hear Mark, critiquing artwork from some of the newer guys. I got to get some autographs from some of the guys. I got to sit and hang out with Eric while he was working and just watch. And I found that one of the things I spent the most time doing was hanging out with the colorist, Steve Furco. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what was making me be all like, I wonder if I could actually do that. And that's what made me start trying out the color. And he's the first one that let me kind of do that. So that's kind of where all that kind of came from.
That's a dream unpaid gig.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't do it for that long. I did it for like a summer, but I'm still in contact with those guys. And, I occasionally get hooked up with some pretty amazing things that I don't think happens to everybody.
Well, hey, some people got it and some people don't. You clearly do.
I'm a genuine fan. I think that's where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this color piece now.
So this is actually one of two paintings I have, and these were by Steve Furco, who is the colorist at Top Cow. And like I was saying, he is the guy that I would generally spend a lot of time with. And I would just sit there and watch him. Like I would just watch and ask questions. And I told him, I said, if I am bothering you, you can send me away. I will not be offended. And he would just say, yeah, I kind of like the company. And one day they came out with this card set, and I was asking him about it, and he started, kind of telling me how, he was thinking about doing some different things, and Top Cow asked him kind of what he wanted to do, and he said he wanted to paint. And so they did this whole card set, from my understanding, and I could get some things wrong. Basically to appease him and give him an opportunity to paint. And I bought this piece on eBay for a pretty good price. And I forget exactly who it was I bought it from, but it's another art collector who I've since been friends with. I'm sure. I can't remember exactly which one, but he also had the other card. So this was a trading card from that card set. I mean, the actual painting is, it's maybe a little shorter than 11 by 17. But he also had the other darkness card that Steve did, which was basically the cover image for the box set, or for the card set. So it's on the box art, it's on the packaging art. The reason I put this one instead of the other one is because this is the one that I like better. So I have both. Those are the pieces that will go on either side of my TV. And they're both from Steve, which makes them very personal, because that relationship and that opportunity really meant a lot to me. So I didn't buy them from Steve. I've never actually gotten a piece of art from him directly, other than a print, which he's given me a couple of. But this is just something so special.
Yeah, no, it's really, really nice. Card art's very popular these days, Royce.
Well, I'm not getting rid of it. People can offer me anything they want. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I would assume somebody's had to have made an inquiry over the years. And just it's very, very nice.
Yeah.
It's cool to see. Like I say, I haven't. I've seen a lot of Top Cow artwork on CAF, but I somehow managed not to have stumbled across this piece before. So, congrats.
Thank you. So this one is another Steve Furco piece, actually, and it's one of two that I have. And basically, the story behind this is one of the things that Steve kind of told me about and showed me a little bit of when I was sitting next to him, was a Tales of the Darkness comic book that he was doing, and he was penciling it. He was very excited about it. All I ever saw from it was the cover image, and I asked him, like, whatever happened to it? And he just said it fell through the cracks and it never got finished, and nothing ever happened. So one day, years later, like many years later, I was at what's his name? I'm blanking on it all of a sudden, but I'm gonna figure it out. But I was at a table for another Top Cow artist. It's the guy who does La Muerta now. And he had a bunch of old pages that he was selling for like $10 a piece. And like I just started looking through the pages to see, kind of what was there. And I ran across this piece, and I instantly recognized the rendition of the character. It didn't say the darkness on there. I actually asked him to write it for me. And I just knew what it was right away, and I asked him, is this what I think it is? And he's like, I don't know, what do you think it is? Type of thing. And sure enough, it was like one of those lost pages from that story. Yeah, Joel Gomez. Earl got it. So yeah, Joel Gomez was the artist. Thank you, Earl. So there were two pages on it, And I bought them up right away. I begged him. I said, if you find any more of these, please let me know. I was obsessed with this Lost Darkness story. And that was kind of part of the reason that I really wanted to see these pages, because I'd never seen them before. And also that tie to Steve was still a thing, you know. And I reached out to, I was showing it to some of the other people that I heard had kind of tinkered on the book. And I think I showed it to Weems, and he started looking at some of the different drawings on the 2 pages. And he started saying, you know, you can tell where different artists have helped out here. He's like, this face here is very Mark Silvestri, and this hand over there is very Dave Finch. And so I don't know who did what on which page, but like the fact that everybody was kind of noodling on it together, you know, it was kind of cool. And I've asked Steve about it a few times since then, and he was able to tell me the writer of the comic. And so I was able to call to write her an email, and she was able to send me the script. So even though I couldn't see the rest of the pages, I got to at least read the story, which was so much fun. So I got to read the story. Steve still has photocopies of the rest of the pages. He moves a lot for work, and so he hasn't had a chance to actually like scan them. And I'm like, just take pictures, man. I just want to see it. So one of these days they'll do it for me. But in the meantime, I have this and one other page from that story, and it's amazing to me that I could have this lost piece of history, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's awesome. And you have 2.
And I have 2. This is the more splashy of the 2 pages, which is why I included this one instead of the other. But the other is on my CAF if anyone wants to see it. Michael Turner.
Yeah.
So when I went to the Top Cow studio, you know, one of the big guys that was really exciting to see was Michael Turner. And he'd already gone through his first bout with cancer. He was always on crutches and limping. But he was always, like, all the good stories you hear about Michael Turner are accurate. Like, he was always the coolest guy to me. He was super friendly. He was one of the funnest people to kind of play with when we did those Halo tournaments. There was one, and I always tell people the story because I have a little story about him. They would come up with these crazy games in Halo. They would have 2 TVs set up, and each TV had 4 players. And they came up with this game once that they called Spy versus Spy. And they would have all the characters would be the same color. So you didn't know who was on your team and who was on the other team. And there would be the 2 teams. And what they wanted to have happen was they wanted one person on each team to basically be a spy for the other team. And their job was to shoot up their own teammates for the other team. And the kicker here was that you weren't allowed to talk during this game. So if you figured out who the spy was, you couldn't tell anyone. And everybody who was at that studio was way better at Halo than me. Like, I wasn't bad, but these guys would get you in 2 seconds. And I remember I was on Mike Turner's team, and because everybody was the same color, in order to know if who the other guy was to see if they were on the other team or not, you had to aim at them for a second and have their name pop up. So his name, like, I would aim at his guy, and as soon as the name popped up, I'd shoot. I couldn't help it. And he was on my team. I was not the spy. But at that point, he was convinced that I was the spy. And after I got him like 2 or 3 times, he started gunning for me, and he got me more than once. And then the real spy got him. And I just remember the look on his face. He was looking at me like, oh, like, what? Wait, what? Huh? And he was such a fun guy. Now, I would get autographs sometimes at the studios, but I would never ask for a sketch. I felt like it was overstepping. I felt like it was just not right of me to do. So I would never ask for a sketch at the studio. So I would get in line like everybody else at the comic book conventions. And the very first time I did that for him, I would get to the front of the line, and he would just look at me and he'd be like, dude, just ask me at the cow. And I'd tell him, I was like, I don't want to do that. You're working. He's like, dude, just ask me at the cow. So I left the line. I was at another signing for him. I got in line again. And he was like, dude, just ask me at the cow. So one day I just happened to be at the cow and I looked up and he was walking and wasn't doing anything. And there was no one else around. And I just looked at him. I'm like, Mike, how about that sketch? And it was one of those moments where you could tell like it wasn't really something he was planning to do at that moment. He was just like, oh, he got me. And so he did this sketch and it's on a comic book backboard. And for many years, this was the only piece of art that I had from Mike Turner. And I love it. I mean, it's on a comic book backboard. It was a free, quick sketch. He spent all but a minute or two on it. But I've seen a couple other darkness sketches from him. And this one's my favorite. It's amazing. And then when I heard that he actually had passed away and his cancer had returned, it hit me so hard because I did know him personally, not as well as a lot of other people, but I knew him. And I was so happy that I at least have a couple stories in this one piece to have as a souvenir of the relationship I had with him, you know?
Oh yeah. No, that's a great story to have associated with this piece for sure.
Mm-hmm. So this is my one other Mike Turner piece. I got this a lot more recently. It was maybe within the last 5 years. It was on a heritage auction. And I paid more than I would normally pay for a piece of art just because my budget, as much as it looks like I have a lot of money to spend on this stuff because of how much I have, you have to remember that I got a lot of it over the course of like 20 years or something like that. I'm a teacher in a public school system. I don't make a lot of money. So my budget is not that high. So this piece came up and I didn't think I was going to win it, but I definitely wanted to at least try. This is from Medieval Spawn Witchblade. And the Brandon Peterson did most of the art on this issue, but Mike Turner did this page and probably a few other ones. And what's cool about it, other than the fact that it's by Michael Turner, is the female character is Medieval Witchblade, and then in front of her, behind the big giant guy, is Medieval Spawn. So it's got both of the main characters, and then this bad guy here was one of the first renditions of the darkness that ever came out. Before his book came out, they had this alternate wielder of the darkness in this crossover, this lady, this Medieval Witchblade, Medieval Spawn crossover. So, I'm checking these boxes. It's Michael Turner. It's got Witchblade and Spawn, and it's got this rendition of the darkness by Mike Turner. And it's a full like action page. I mean, it's so cool to have this. So the other thing that's funny about this particular page and how I got it. So like I mentioned, it was on Heritage Auctions. So I bid the top of what I felt comfortable bidding. And when I won it to the dollar. If someone had bid 1 penny over what I had bid, I'd have lost. I can't believe I got it to the number that I had put on it. But it just happened to work out that way. There were a lot of other big Turner pieces in that auction, and I think that helped me get it for what was probably a reasonable price.
Yeah, that happens. When one consignor brings in artwork from the same creator, that a piece or two might fall through the cracks. So that could be what happened. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. All right, so this starts the story with Joe Benitez that I was starting to tell before with the whole Weems, that old Darth Vader page. So, like I said, I was interning at Top Cow, and my favorite artist was hands down Joe Benitez. I mean, I love Mark Silvestri. I love Dave Finch. I loved all the guys that were like these big names over there. But my personal favorite was from the very beginning was Joe Benitez. And I'm sitting there at the Top Cow booth. And here he comes. He walks over. And I look at him, I'm like, wow. It's, especially when you're younger and you see this person that's like your favorite, it's like seeing a movie star, it's like really special, right? So I tell him, I'm like, I've been interning at the Cal for, a few months, and I always look for you and I never see you. And I'm so excited to meet you. And he did a free quickie sketch for me, and he's like, oh yeah, well, next time I see you over there, I'll have to give you something special. And I know that people say things all the time. I never expected anything from him, at that point, but I did always look for him still, for the short amount of time that I was still going there. And I never did. So the very next year, this was at San Diego Comic-Con, he walks in again. It's exactly the same sort of thing. And he looks at me and he's just like, don't I owe you something? And I didn't know how to respond to that because he didn't owe me anything. He offered me something, but I wasn't going to hold him to it. And so I just kind of blurted out, yeah. And he's like, who's your favorite character again? And I said, the Darkness. And he pulled this out, and it's a double page spread. And he just handed it to me and gifted it to me. And I was flabbergasted. And written real lightly on there somewhere was a price tag, which was $1,000. And this is, 20 years ago. And I was, in probably my very early 20s at the time, late teens, early 20s. And that was like an ungodly amount of money for me at the time to even consider spending on anything. And the fact that he had given it to me, and it's my favorite artist and my favorite character, I mean, there's nothing you can do to have made me happier in that particular moment. And it's still like one of the number one prizes in my collection. I have a cover by him now, and I love it. But this piece, I think I love a lot more.
Yeah, you have quite a few pieces by Joe in your CAF.
Yeah, I've had a long opportunity to get to know him and buy stuff from him, and he's hooked me up with a lot. But yeah, so and there's a couple of them on this list here to share too. So this piece is kind of what resulted from that last piece. So when he gave me that piece, I was over the moon, and I decided that I wanted to do something cool for him. So at the very next convention, I bought him beer. I didn't know what to do. So I went in, and he was sitting at a table with Joe Weems, and I gave them a 6-pack of beer at the convention. And they were very nice and very appreciative, and they offered to do me a commission as a thank you for the thank you that I just gave them. Because that's all it was. When I was giving it to him, I wasn't trying to get anything. I was trying to just say thank you. And so he asked me what I wanted, and I told him that I wanted the Darkness with Weapon Zero themed Darklings. And because he used to do these themed Darklings in his comic book, his Darkness comics, like he did a Spider-Man Darkling and a Wolverine Darkling, and they were really, fun. So I loved his other Top Cow book, which was Weapon Zero. Hey, James. And so I asked him for that. And so Benitez said he would draw it, and Weems said he would ink it. And Joe finished it, or Joe Benitez finished it, but Joe Weems didn't actually get to it. So you have to remember, at this point in time, I don't have a lot of actual art. Like, I had a little bit, but I didn't have anything like this. And Benitez had finished it, and Weems had it for probably a year or two. And he said, I feel so bad, that I just don't have time for it. And I asked him, just because I didn't know how things worked back then, and this was like going to be my prized possession, this piece. And so I told him, don't worry about it. Just give it to me as is. I'll be super happy with it. And so he gave me the piece penciled. I later got a blue line of it inked by Rick Basaldua, and he did a good job. But one day I ran into Weems again, and he just pulled me over, and he's like, dude, I don't feel right about that. I said I'd ink it for you. I have more time now. I'll do it for you now if you want. And I told him, don't worry about it. It was not a big deal. I really appreciated the sentiment. I told him, just don't worry about it. And to apologize for not doing it and thank me for, I guess, letting him off the hook or whatever, and to ease his own conscience about it, he gifted me another page from his portfolio, which happens to be that darkness page that features him fighting the Magdalena in a toy store, and that's when Star Wars were huge again. So there's a Darth Vader toy display, and that's what that was. And that's how I got that other piece.
Nice. Hey.
So this all goes into the whole genuine fan and really getting lucky, like I was telling you before.
It pays to take care of the creators and be a fan, like you said.
Yeah. So this was my very first published piece by Mark. It's very funny. I've gotten a handful of pieces from him for free, and they're all like freebie sketches. And I've got all the published art that I've actually paid for. And this one, I think it was on Comic Link. I'm not 100% sure, but I got it on an auction site. And what makes this piece really special is this is the darkness portion of the 1996 Jam poster. So, you know, the poster itself features all the other Top Cow characters, and each character was done, you know, by a different artist, and then they were digitally, you know, put together for this Jam poster. And the thing about this poster was, this is right when I became a fan. That's when the darkness came out, and I had that poster in my room for years, like a decade. And then this thing pops up on, I think it was Comic Link, but it was brand new at the time, so no one really followed it yet. And also on Comic Link were a cover from Mark Silvestri of The Darkness. It was The Darkness Zero, or The Universe Zero, which was a variant from the Darkness 40. And then there was a David Finch double page spread featuring The Darkness with Wings. And I decided at the time I was going to bid the most I could afford. And I didn't think I'd win either. I only bid on this one, and I bid on the cover. I didn't bid on the David Finch piece, which I still regret a bit. But I won both of them for $300 each.
Yeah, some people were sleeping on that auction.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was brand new at the time, but I mean, this is like up in my, this might be my number one favorite piece of art that I have, just because of, you know, it's by the original team. It's from that poster I had on my wall forever. It's my favorite character. I mean, I think they should turn this into a variant cover, just as, you know, like that. I've mentioned it to them once or twice, but they haven't done it.
Now, is this one of the pieces that you might frame and look
Oh yeah,
at?
this is a definite. Most of the ones I'm sharing are definites. Most of them. And this is my favorite page from The Darkness that I have. This is from the second issue. And it's not the very first time, but it's one of the very first times you see him in his full armor on the interior of the comic book. And honestly, up to that point, I think it was the coolest one. This was another one of those pieces that was at the ceiling of what I could pay. But luckily, there are some collectors out there that when they see you're a huge fan, will work with you. And so he was willing to do payments with me. He didn't care how long it took, but I think I also found this one on CAF. I'm not 100% sure, but I got it, and it's one of the prizes in my collection. I have it as my phone case cover.
Here, I'll switch over to it. There you go.
So, yeah, it's one of my
custom printed, exactly, right? I imagine.
Yeah, it's one of those companies that you can just kind of send a picture in.
Right, exactly.
So you know, I do a lot of that sort of thing. Like this is a Dale Keown page I actually have. And I used to work at a school where I would make shirts. And so before I left, I made like 10 of them with art from my own collection. And it's printed real size. So this is like 11 by 17 on my shirt with a real high DPI because I have the original art. And I even showed like the one that was on my phone cover, the last picture you showed. I wore that one in front of Mark and he's like, how did you make this? He's like, that's the best I've ever seen a shirt come out. I was like, I made it myself. That's why.
Yeah, that's funny. Well, at least he didn't give you grief for,
I didn't sell them.
No, exactly. You weren't making any money. If you were to sell it, then you could get into trouble.
Now, this one is a more recent acquisition, and it's another real special darkness page. And the reason that it's a real special one is it's the very first page from the preview issue of the darkness. There was another collector who had some darkness art, and his prices were a bit more than I was comfortable with. But he was like, I'm in the mood to sell some of these. He had the first 2 pages. This is the first one, but he had the first 2 pages. And he's like, I just want it to go to a fan. So he gave me a discount. He allowed me to do payments. And what's cool about it is anytime you open the Darkness Volume 1, like here, I have one with me. Let me just show you this. Go to me for a second here. So here's a big Volume 1 compendium of the Darkness. So the very first page, when you get into the story, is that page. So anytime they reproduce the Darkness, the original series, that's the first page. And I also have the second page. I have found the person on CAF who has the third page, and I've been wanting to reach out to him. I'm just always broke, which is the reason I haven't yet, just to see if it would even be an option to get it. But the white whale, the one I'll never find, and if I ever find it, I won't be able to afford it, is the Splash, the 4th page, which is the last of the 4-page preview. I might get a recreation of it done if I can actually get my hands on the 3rd page. Gil's asking for the 2nd page. Here's a look at the 2nd page.
Yeah, and that's I'll put a link in the chat.
Yeah.
To your Silvestri art because it's the 1st and 2nd artworks.
Yeah.
From the link I just posted.
So that's pretty amazing that I have the very first page. You know, his first appearance technically was in Witchblade. So I don't have his first appearance, but the first appearance on the book that actually has the Darkness written across the logo, I'll take it. I'm very pleased to have it.
Well, you got half, right? Half of the intro. So that's not so bad.
Yeah. So this one's cool. This one's by Brett Booth. I became a fan of Brett Booth when I was first getting into comic books. He did that Spider-Man Backlash crossover. And I didn't know Backlash at all. And I knew Spider-Man because everyone knew Spider-Man from cartoons or whatever. But that was the first book that I was just like I just was taken by the art. I thought it was amazing. And I always wanted a piece from him, and I had never met him. In all the years that I'd gone to conventions after that, I never met him. And then one day it said he was going to be at a con that I was planning to go to. So I went, and he didn't make it to the con for some reason. He didn't get to go. He had to cancel. So I was really bummed. And then another con happened, and he was supposed to come again. And I think his dog was sick or something like that. And he had to call out. He had to cancel out again. So he was like becoming this guy that was going to be like the hardest one for me to get. Like, I'm 0 for 2 here, you know? And finally there was another convention, and it was at LA Comic-Con, I think. And he was going to be there. And I was only going for one day. And my wife came with me that time. I remember she's not super into this stuff. And I told her, I'm like, the only reason I'm going is for Brett Booth. And he even said online somewhere that he was probably only going to take like 1 commission for the day. So my goal was to literally run to his booth so that I could make sure I was the one guy that he would do a commission for. And so I did. I ran to his booth, and luckily I was able to get the commission, tell him what a fan I was. I asked for the darkness with a little themed darkling, which is the little backlash darkling there. And I was really happy. It was the only thing I wanted at that show, and I don't know if I bought anything else while I was there or not. I remember him telling me the price, and it was more than I would normally spend, but my wife was like, he's what you came for. So I was like, I got the blessing, so I got it anyway. And so after I got it, it was a really cool image. And then Bat, who's the guy who inked the darkness originally over Mark, saw it, and he's like, this looks like it would be a lot of fun to ink. I'll give you a discount if you want to commission it from me. So, and I've known Bat for years, you know, so I was all too happy. And plus I sent him a scan of it. So anytime I get something inked, I like to get a blue line of it done, because that way I could have both. I know some people like it inked right over the pencils, but you know, inkers are all different too, and you never know how it'll turn out. And it's nice to be able to preserve the, you know, the original pencils too. So he inked it. This is how it came out. And Top Cow picked it up as a cover during their last Kickstarter. So they have an editor there named, or they did, named Elena. She actually passed away recently, which I'm still having a hard time with. But she's been kind of one of those people that's helped me keep this connection to the studio. And she was the person I would work through with these, like these covers. They've actually used a few of my pieces of art as covers now, but this was one of them. So this is the one I wanted to share.
No, it's fantastic. Now this is interesting.
So this one, yeah, this one's kind of fun. This is by Jordan Raskin, and it's an early rendition of The Darkness. There's literally, I think, like 4 pieces of art that have been shown anywhere of this early rendition. There's, I think, a 1994 or 1995 Jam poster with Mark's art where they have him like this, and he's colored totally different. He's colored red. So he's mostly like black and red. So he's more Spawn-like, I think, was where I think they were going with. And then the other versions, or the other ways that I've seen him portrayed like this, the other artists, Randy Queen had a version, and Michael Turner had a version. I know there's a collector who has the Michael Turner version that you can find in CAF. But the Randy Queen one you can only really see, I think, in one of their Universe comic books where they, you know, show some of the different things that they have in the works. But for me, the thing that is so cool about this piece is just that it's this early rendition of The Darkness. This is a version of The Darkness that most people haven't actually seen. And it's my favorite character. So anything that was a different iteration of this character, especially one that nobody knows about, is very interesting to me. Like, I just want to know everything about it. And I've talked to Jordan Raskin when I was in the midst of purchasing this, and he was telling me about the writer. I forget her name, but it was a woman. And he said the biggest thing that she added to it was the whole Darkling thing, all the demons or something like that. So, like, I want to know more. Like, I've asked Mark about it once or twice, and he didn't really have a lot to really share about the different, you know, renditions when he was working up to it. But it's so interesting to me to learn this, like, this hidden history of characters that I've followed for so long.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, wasn't familiar with Jordan's work. There's not a lot of it on CAF, but
no, he did some Predator, and he did some Ripclaw, I think. I'm not sure what else, but those are the 2 that I'm aware of.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix of I think, like, convention sketches and then a few published pieces, but not a lot. So that's cool. It's always good to own a piece of history, right? And the evolution of a new character. But now we get into some James O'Barr stuff.
now we get into some James O'Barr stuff. So this piece was sold by a guy who collects a lot of his art. He's very active in the Facebook groups, and he sold a couple that he didn't really feel the need to keep. I guess he was thinning it out, the collection, to curate it just a little bit. And this one popped up on eBay, and it's not very big. And it's one of the ones I actually have up already. I've only got like 2 pieces up already, and this is one of them. But it's a full painting. It's like it's not huge. It's like maybe like 5x7. But it's amazing. And I've asked James about it. I've gotten to meet him a few times. I don't know him well or anything, but I've gotten to meet him a few times. And he is somewhat responsive on Facebook. And I asked him about it, and he said it was used for, I think, like a promotional picture for a shop in Europe or something like that. But it's just like having this comic book rendition of the Crow with this trademark blue that he tends to use, and then the rain. I mean, this piece is just like amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I have a handful of pieces by James O'Barr, but this one is my favorite. It is just stunning, like Dave just said.
But it's 5x7. Is that?
Yeah, the actual here. Let me if you want to highlight me for a second, I'm gonna take you across my room here to the actual painting so you can see how big it is. You have to tell me if you can see it though. There you go.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And it arrived in that frame. I didn't touch it, but there's my little crow corner.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I would have guessed it was at least 9x12 or bigger, but that's
the amount of detail. I mean, it's definitely bigger than 5x7, but it's not much bigger. Like here's my hand in front of it. I'm 6'5", by the way. So.
Awesome. Go back to that. There we go. No, congrats. I love James' work. It's fantastic.
I've actually gotten him to draw me a darkness before too, which is really exciting. And if anyone wants to see something really cool, go to my CAF, because at one point they were doing a card set for Brandon Lee, which was never released. I've been able to find, I think, like 4 images from the set, just from the artists. And I even have an ad for the set, but the set was never released as far as I can tell. But I was able to get the piece by Joe Benitez, and it's just pencils. And so I scanned it, and James inked it for me. So now I've got a tag team piece between the two of them, which is really cool.
Well, no, that's very, very cool. So let's see one more by James. This is
one more. So I have a T-shirt. It doesn't fit me anymore, but it's this image on the T-shirt. And I asked James once if he had it, the original art. I didn't think I could get it. Even if he had it, I didn't think I'd be able to afford it. And he said he think it was long gone. And so I was resigned to that. It's one of those pieces that will be lost and never found. And when I was doing the transaction on that Joe Benitez sketch, I mentioned it again. He's like, I think I ran across it recently. And then he wrote back to me, and he had it. And it was not at an unheard of price. It was, he tends to be pretty affordable. Like he actually tries to, I think, keep it at a reasonable level for his art. And he had it. Like I've even gone so far as to get a recreation of this done once. And he had the original, so he sold it to me, and it's another one that's definitely going on the wall. I love it. It's probably one of my all-time favorite images of the Crow. It's got just all the elements that I love,
including a skull
on the birds, and I don't know, he just looks great in it. It's you can tell where things are changed. You see that white gap up at the top. He actually had to extend the board he was working on to get the top of his head in there, but I don't even care. Like all that sort of thing to me. I remember there was one artist once who is heavy on the artwork that he's doing, and there was a little hole in there. And he shows it to me. He's like, so if you don't want it anymore, I'll understand. I'm like, it's part of the artistic process, man. It's totally cool. And I just took it and I love it. It doesn't matter to me. This is the piece that was used to create the image that was used on that shirt. I don't care about that line across his head or that little gap on the board. This is the piece and I love it. It's amazing.
Oh, it's awesome. It really is. I mean, like I say, I love James's stuff. This is does it have some zipatone on it too? Or am I?
Yeah. Especially I think down towards the bottom. He
Uh-huh.
told me to keep it out of the light or out of the sunlight. And that's when I got to tell him, well, I'm planning to build a room and there will be no windows. And he's like, all right, good.
Where you want to put it?
Yeah, that's going up.
All right, tell me about this one.
All right, so this is probably arguably the simplest piece of art that I have on my list here. And what's cool about this one is it's Rob Schraub's Scud. And Scud is one of those really like underground characters that has a big following these days. And I was introduced to Scud from I think a video game back in the day. And I had some of the random books, and like I always had an interest in Scud. I don't think I had ever really read it. And then they came out with the whole shebang and I read it and I loved it. If anybody hasn't read it, just read the first issue. The first issue alone is the best part of the whole series, and it doesn't lose anything as the series goes on. It's really just a fun series. And to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Scud, Rob Schraub said anyone who buys a comic book from his eBay store on Scud's anniversary would get a sketch. So I ordered a piece, or I ordered a comic book. And honestly, I didn't even care about the comic book. I really just wanted the sketch. Well, he writes me back, or not him, but whoever it is that's running the site for him, writes me back and says, so bad news, there's we're out of that comic book, so if you want, we'll give you a refund, but you can still keep the sketch. And I told the person, I already have the comic books, that I'm real happy with them, keep the money. Maybe he could just put a little more love into the sketch. So it turns out that what he did was he did like a printout of a pose, and everybody who got a sketch got an inked pre-done pose. So they're all hand drawn in the end, but they're all the same for the most part, except for this one. I got a totally unique pose. It's in full color. And he used it, as a promotion, in following times to show, so it's just like a really cool piece. And the value on Scud has skyrocketed. Like the pages, when they come up from this little underground comic book, are astronomical. So to have this little souvenir from this guy, it's just something you don't get every day. It's so cool that I have this. And I even wrote back to the lady that was handling his eBay. It's like, I just wanted to say again how much I appreciate this piece and I love it, and it's going to be framed on the wall, and it will be. That's one of the ones going up. So anyways, that's why I wanted to include this one on this list. I have a lot of characters that I like that are kind of lesser known, or kind of mid known, like this one. And so these are the ones that I kind of get real excited about sometimes.
Well, I had never read Scud, and I think it was like 6 or 7 months ago, a page, maybe it was on Heritage or somewhere, where it went for a whole lot of money. So it got on my radar. I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And so yeah, you're not lying when you say that the pages that are out there, because there aren't many, are highly sought after by collectors.
So it's really cool for anyone who doesn't know Scud very well.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Schraub did most of the series, and then he had like one issue left, and he left comic books. He went to Hollywood, he started working on TV and movies, and he didn't go back for years and years and years. And then they decided to re-release Scud as a big volume, and he actually went back and finished it. And instead of one issue, he made it like 3 issues, and it's really cool. After, like, at the point where it stops, like, he actually makes fun of himself. He's like, and then there was time and a wait, and he kind of like illustrates the fact that there was this big gap between the time that last issue came out and the new ones come out. And he gave it a really great ending. It's totally worth it. So if anyone hasn't read Scud, give it a shot. You can get the whole volume in the big shebang. And they have like 7 printings or something crazy like that. So you should be able to get a good deal on one.
All right. I will look it up.
Sometimes I forget what I put on the list. So this is a painting by Dan Brereton.
I thought it was Dan, because you didn't label him, but Dan's color palette is kind of
it's unmistakable. This art was used for the toy packaging for. It wasn't exactly a relaunch of Battle Beasts from the 80s. There was a toy line from the 80s called Battle Beasts, but Mini Mates bought it, and the title Battle Beasts, and they created their own toy line, which was somewhat reminiscent of the old Battle Beasts. And I was totally sold on it because it looked cool. I like the whole Animal Warrior thing. I'm a Ninja Turtle fan from my childhood, and and I had Battle Beasts as a kid, so I was on board. And I was at Comic-Con one year, and they're just, for some reason, every year I go to Comic-Con, something really cool happens. Like, it's always different. Either I win something or I get something really cool. This particular year, they had a guitar, an electric guitar, being raffled off by, I think it was IDW or Diamond Select Toys, I don't remember, with this artwork printed on it. And I remember filling out the raffle ticket, and then just for fun, I doodled my own little Battle Beast on it. And I don't know if it had anything to do with me winning or not, but I won that guitar. And so I still have it. It was supposed to come with a case, which I'm still really sore I never actually got. They said that the raffle was only for the guitar and not the case, which I debate, but it is what it is. But once I got the guitar and the comic book came out, the comic book that they made was really fun. It was so fun. I absolutely love the comic book. So this thing, again, checking the boxes, right? So the guitar itself was like the coolest prize you can get. I have another collection that's guitars. So it hit the guitar thing, it hit the old 80s nostalgia, toy thing, and it hit the comic book thing. And so I have this guitar. So I started looking into the artwork for the comic book, and I got a really cool piece from Jeff Zorno that was used. It's a tri piece, like it's got 3 panels that were used for 3 different variant covers. And I was able to get that. And there was a cover by I'm forgetting his name, this one other guy. He did 2 covers actually, and he only could find one of them in the end, but I got his cover. And then there was this one, and this was the one that I really, really wanted because I had the guitar and I had to have the art that matched the guitar. And I went to Dan Brereton for it, and I tried really hard to haggle just a little bit, just because it was kind of at the ceiling for me. And he went down a little bit, not a lot. He just kind of said, this is a luxury, hobby. You got to pay for it if you want it. And he didn't have love for the piece. I thought if I waited him out a little bit, he would drop the price, because I was sure that no one else was going to come knocking on his door for this Battle Beast piece. And he didn't like it. He said that they kind of didn't pay him what he was worth on it or something like that. I don't know. So in the end, he lowered it a little bit, but he agreed to payments, but then said he was going to charge me a a convenience fee for doing payments.
You still got the piece. That's the thing.
But I got the piece. I was able to get it a little bit less, and I was able to pay for it a little bit by a little bit. I mean, because for some of these more expensive pieces, unless you're, selling pieces to fund the new pieces, it's the only way you're going to get them sometimes, So, but I have the piece. So I'm really excited. I have the piece. I have the guitar. I have the toys now, too, because I had to get them since I had the guitar.
Is the guitar going to go on the wall?
The guitar is not going to go on the wall. I don't like putting guitars on the wall because they get dusty, and it seems like it tarnishes the guitar a little bit. So I like keeping them in their cases. But it is a pretty guitar. I like it. It's more of a souvenir than a guitar I'm gonna go play necessarily, but I still really like it. The wall space that's left is reserved for the artwork.
I saw the amps behind you when you were.
Yeah, so if you look on this wall over here, those are my guitars in the cases over there. So it's still a mess in here. I'm still working on this room. It's
you just need to get some glass cases to put them in.
There's not room in here for that. It's a decent sized room, but it's only so big.
It's not big enough for that.
No.
All right, what do we got next here?
All right, so
Evil Dead. My favorite.
This is Evil Dead piece. This is another Joe Benitez. So like I said, I've been able to become pretty decent friends with Joe Benitez, which is so cool for me because he is my favorite artist. And I'm a big Evil Dead fan. I love Bruce Campbell. And they had a signing at Comic-Con that you had to get a raffle ticket to get. And so this was my big get for that Comic-Con, right? So I was able to get into the signing for that. And they said you could either get the poster or one item signed. And posters are cool, but if I'm going to put anything up from this, collection of art that I have, it's going to be an original piece and not a poster. Like, it's just, that's where the priority is, right? Mm-hmm. So I run to Joe and I tell him what's up. And I ask him if he could just loosely lay out a piece and I would get it signed and then he could finish it later. And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. He lays it out. It was just Ash, but it was signed by Bruce Campbell, who's, Ash. And then it was also signed by Lucy Lawless, who was on the new show, and Sam Raimi, who's the director, all of which are my favorite. Sam Raimi is one of my favorite directors. And if you look down by where his signature, that little teeny tiny Book of the Dead, that was drawn by Sam. So I have a Sam sketch too, which is really cool. So after I got it signed, I brought it back to Joe and he kept it for a really long time, but he decided not to charge me for it. So I wasn't going to complain. I was like, he's hooking me up. It's my favorite artist. He's doing me a solid. I am not going to mess with him, for timeliness or anything like that. And then he told me, you got to pick at me because it's the only way it'll get done. So I would reach out once in a great while to ask. And so he did it. And it was just Ash. And I told him, I'm like considering trying to find another artist maybe to fit in the Lucy Lawless and Sam Raimi character. And I asked him if he thought it would look good or if it would clutter up the piece. And he said, if it's done right, it'll look good. So I was talking to him about which artist, I could get on it. And I was talking about maybe Martin Montiel, who works with him on Lady Mechanica, and maybe someone else to do the Sam Raimi. And I noticed that he didn't sign the art. So he didn't sign it himself after he did it. So I went to bring it back to him at another show and just to have him sign it. And then I asked him if he was going to be doing sketches during the show. And he said, yeah. So I'm standing there wondering, what should I get from him? Because I've gotten a lot of stuff from him over the years, including all my favorite characters. And then I looked at this piece of art and I'm like, Joe, do you want to add the other two characters? And he's like, well, I'll probably do it at home, but yeah, I have time for that now. And he gives, I paid for those. He gave me a discount, but I paid for them. And this is how it came out. He did exactly what I wanted, which was Lucy Lawless with the dagger and Sam Raimi as a Deadite. And this is now one of my favorite pieces of my collection. I just love it. It's so awesome.
That's a great story. Yeah, I love Evil Dead's one of my favorite movies. I named my son Ash.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
so and I just realized I don't know where they are. I've got a couple pieces of art because I did a signing with Bruce Campbell, and I know I've got 2 pages and I can't even remember what they're from that I had him sign. I'm gonna have to dig them out because I just looked at my CAF gallery and I don't have them posted.
Oh wow. I've
So
had
yeah, that's silly.
since this, I had him sign, I think like 2 more pieces, and it's actually made me have to start planning. So this piece I was really happy with, right?
Hmm.
I have another piece that I got the next year by artist David Miller, and I was really happy with the piece too. And I got another signing, so I took it with me to the signing, and it was Bruce Campbell and the rest of the 2 younger characters from the Evil Dead show,
Right, the TV.
and 1 or 2 of the producers. So I had them all sign it, and they push you through these lines really fast because they're really trying to get through everybody. And 2 of them asked me my name and wrote my name on the board. And the artist who drew it, actually left a big blank white space on the top for signatures because he knew what I was going to use it for.
Uh-huh.
And so they filled it up with my name. So my name is on there twice. And then they all scribbled all over the rest of it, including on part of the artwork. And I was so dismayed. And I remember showing it to him, and we both looked at it and were somewhat disappointed with how it came out. So I've had the opportunity to get a few other autographs, and I don't usually get autographs, but I think I have them in here. But I started to do this new thing, and I don't have much to show for it yet. But if you want to highlight me for a second,
Yep.
and this is the result of that whole thing. I started making these autograph pages. And so I Photoshopped this, and there's a space for the person to sign and a space for the person to do art so that they will not scribble over the autograph. And I've made a couple of these. So I went to an Alien signing, and I was able to get like the guy who was in the Alien and Predator suit. And so I made this cool thing, and I'm just waiting to not be broke so that I can have someone do some art on it. And I got to do the same thing with from the Guyver. Here's a Guyver one by the director and the guy who played the Guyver. So like things like that. So these are things that I'm planning for my next round of commissions, but I just haven't gotten there yet.
Very wise thing to do, especially after that. See, but Marcus does say it makes for a good story, right? I mean, you're always going to remember that,
Yeah.
even if you don't like the way it
Well,
turned out.
the people who sign those, they're really excited to see what comes out of them. So,
Sure.
I think it'll come. I already have artists picked out for most of them and everything. So, um, I think it'll make for some really cool special pieces. I'm not an entrepreneur though, because I don't sell any of it. I'm gonna leave it all to my family, and they're gonna be like, "What the hell do we do with all this stuff?"
You're gonna make a museum out of your back
Right?
man cave.
That's what this room is, right?
Hmm.
So this one is by my friend Claudio Sepulveda. He does some comic art. He's not a big name artist, but he has published a few small things. But I've known him since the Top Cow Messenger days or message board days, and he's become one of my best friends. He lives in Mexico, and when I would go to San Diego for Comic-Con, I would hang out with him every year, and we've actually sustained a friendship. And so for those of you who haven't read the Darkness and Witchblade, at the end of the series that had finished not long ago, the Darkness and Witchblade had a kid, and her name was Hope. And he started coming up with this idea of doing a fan fiction for this character. And he asked me if I wanted to check it out, and of course I did. So I read his basically what was his treatment, and there were a lot of ideas in there, and some of them I liked and some of them didn't make sense to me, just because it's not that he wasn't a good storyteller or something like that. It's just that since I had read all of it, I knew the continuity, I knew which characters were dead. He didn't know all that stuff. So I enjoyed reading it though. And I asked him, can I take a pass at this and see what I can do with it? And he said, yeah. So I took a bunch of the ideas that he did that I liked, and I put a bunch of my own ideas, and we decided to make a one-shot comic book and kind of pitch it to Top Cow as, you know, during one of their talent hunts, even though it wasn't really what they were asking for. And as we're working on it, you know, the story just kind of grows in my head a little bit. And I asked him, do you want to make this like a 4-issue thing? And he's like, it just kept his creative juices going. And so he's like, yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. And so we actually did. We completed 4 32-page issues of this comic book that basically says what happened to this character after they ended the series, because nothing ever happened with her, right? And we showed it to Top Cow. Some of them loved it. David Hine, who was the last writer on The Darkness before they had closed out the series, he gave me a glowing reaction when I sent it to him to read. And there are these guys who put up a book called, what is it called? I forget what it's called, but they have their own image like tribute book that's fan made, and they were selling it online with all proceeds going to charity. And they asked me if I wanted to produce this book with them. And you know, I have a lot of love for this book. This was a real fun project that we actually saw through to completion. And I told them, you know, that I would love to, it would be a dream come true, but the only way I would ever consider doing it is if I had the permission of Top Cow.
Mhm.
And so he said, well, see if you can get it. And it took a little while, but ultimately they gave me permission. So I may be able to actually get this in print for people to, you know, check out. I actually have the whole thing on Facebook for free for anyone who would want to read it. But you know, this is the very first piece that Claudio had done of the main character and her Darklings. She has very specific Darklings, and in one of the issues, I actually give them each a backstory. and so yeah, she this is just a cool piece because of all that.
See, and you were just saying you weren't an entrepreneur, and
I'm not going to make any money out of it, but it's, you know, it's a product of love for fun, and it's all about the enjoyment for me.
well, most projects like that aren't profitable, so you're in good company with a lot of other people probably, but still, that is cool. So we actually have one more piece to look at.
One last one.
Let's take a look at this one now. Tell me about this. You know, there's a likeness here. I'll give you
This
that.
is me. This
I
was
know.
drawn to be me. This is by Rob Duenas, and it is from a current book that is out called Spawn Kills Every Spawn, and it's this little chibi version of Spawn. And he was really excited to land this gig. He said he was like a super like Todd McFarlane Spawn fan from the heyday, and when he landed this, he was beyond excited. So he told me right away that he was putting me in the book. And the story behind it goes back to when I was still new at going to comic book conventions. So it was like very early 2000s. And I went to San Diego Comic-Con, and Rob was in Artist Alley. And I heard Rob kind of tell this story since more recently. And he basically said that he was surrounded by some big names and no one was giving him the time of day. And so I randomly came up to him. I was like the very first, or one of the very first people who did. And I paid him, I think it was like $5 for a sketch. And he hates that sketch now, but I have always absolutely loved that sketch. And so in this comic book, so basically after I got that sketch, I kept following him. I kept buying art from him. I kept up with him on social media. He even went ahead and like met up with me outside of the convention a few times to grab a meal, which was really cool. And he has decided to call me his first backer. He kind of coined it. He said I was the first person who basically supported him as an artist by following his work and being a repeat customer. So in this issue of Spawn, what happens is there's this little chibi Spawn, and he's at a Spawn convention, and nobody is paying him any attention. Like, all the different people around him at these other booths have these huge lines, and he's got nobody. And all of a sudden, this big burly guy comes out. He's a total fanboy, and he doesn't really want anything from the Spawn character in this comic book, but it was reminiscent of how he felt when I walked up to him for the first time. And he put in all these little inside jokes. So if you look really close, there's a medieval Spawn Witchblade there, because he knows I'm a Top Cow fan, hanging out of the backpack. He's got a patch on the shirt that says Top Clown instead of Top Cow. There's a little chibi darkness right next to that is got Spawn makeup on. And because we've nerded out over Scud, and I got a commission from him, he threw a little Scud in there too. I know where the medieval Spawn comes from, because it was SpawnCon. I don't know where the My Little Pony came from. So that's something he threw in on his own. But, I've been a fan for decades now on the comic books in general. And I've had a lot of luck and fortune to, make friends with artists, get some cool free things, get, just actually be a friend, right? And then that's the most amazing thing. But I have never until this point been drawn into a comic book. And I saw Marcus Y. He said I need to create this as a photo. So I got to go and see Rob at Comic-Con, where he was signing this. And if I'd had a little more time, I didn't think I was going to get to go to Comic-Con, but if I'd had any time, I would have been so tempted to try to recreate this and show up at his at his signing wearing all that. It would have been so funny, but I'm creative. I don't know if I'm that creative.
Yeah, the hat is the thing that's going to challenge you the most.
Oh yeah, I'd have to make it out of cardboard, like a little cardboard flat standy thing, but it would have been but it was really great. I didn't get to spend a lot of time with him, but it was still really cool to see him. I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. And one of the people in line, they had a special Todd McFarlane cover, but they'd sold out of it before I even got to Comic-Con that year. And I was showing them how he put me in the book and telling them a little bit about it. Turned out the guy worked for Todd McFarlane Productions, and he gifted me his McFarlane copy, knowing that he could get another one later, and let me get that one signed, which was so cool. And then let's see, I got one more little thing. He sent me this piece of art, the one that we shared, but he included a comic book. He included the comic book that he used to practice his signature. I just think this is so fun. It's got his signature on it, literally like 80 times or something. It's on the outside. It's on the inside. And then on my page, where is it?
He's looking for the right color.
On my page, yep, there it is in color. He has a little note for me. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So these kinds of souvenirs are the priceless part of collecting, right? Mm-hmm. This is the stuff that, kind of transcends having a collectible.
Yeah, you've led a very interesting, fun, charmed, and collector life. But that's just like you said. It's back to just being personable and getting to know the creators, and that's that always kind of pays dividends, right? To be treat everybody fair. It's true.
Yeah.
Well, man, this is I've been in your CAF Gallery numerous times over the years, so I'm glad we got to finally talk about everything here. I'm going to talk to Maureen tomorrow about that limitation in the artist.
That'd be nice. I use CAF daily. Like, one of the ways that I celebrate my collection is I'm in art collecting groups on Facebook, and also fan groups for like the Top Cow stuff. And I go into my CAF and I go to the next page and
Mhm.
I get that piece and I share one piece every single day. I've been doing it for years. So I use CAF on a daily basis. And so it's been this amazing tool. I really appreciate that you have it out there. Um, and I man, if I didn't have it, I don't know how I would keep track of all this art that I actually have. I get to enjoy it in a digital space without having to pull out books. And then when I do pull out books and see it in person in full size, it's really special. But to be able to share it that easily is really, really fun. And it makes it something that I can do on a regular basis. First thing I do when I wake up. It's that one little thing that brings me joy, and I do it every single day.
You're going to have an app soon, so you're going to be able to spend more time on it. But you'll be able to see it before you get out of bed. Typically, what I've been doing of late while we get through the final stages of the beta testing, it's just like I can look at CAF anytime I want now. So, but no, I appreciate hearing that, Royce. I mean, a lot of people, it's interesting how CAF has how people view it as a tool and as part of their daily life, or something that's assisted them to get artwork or meet other collectors. It's very gratifying to know that it's meant a lot of different things to a lot of different collectors. It's even down to I hear from artists that when they're looking for costume reference, CAF comes up a lot. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I mean, you just never know the value of something like that. But 22 years down the road, you find out it's meant a whole lot of different things to a lot of different people. But
One thing that's been kind of funny, not necessarily a good thing, but that's funny, is I post so much of my darkness art on CAF, and I have the lion's share of darkness art out there, right? Like there's other people who have some really beautiful premium pieces, but when you're talking about quantity, I think I've got the market cornered. So when people do searches for darkness art, a lot of times they get my art, and when I get a commission, sometimes I'll get something very reminiscent to something I have there on CAF.
sure, of course. Yeah, but that happens, right? I mean, a lot of times when the artists look at stuff for reference, I mean, yeah, there's no,
Hasn't happened that much.
yeah, but it does. I mean, that's kind of part of OA collecting. I find I've done a couple sales shows with Fred Hembeck, and I got to see his. I'm doing a show with him next month, or no, it's actually this month in October. And so he sent me the new pieces that he worked on, and part of the description he said, I kind of revisited a few pieces that I did 15, 16 years ago, so they're very similar, but with a new twist on it. So even artists will riff themselves sometimes, just
Yeah.
because you know, you can only be so creative with it, with characters that maybe you've drawn a lot before, but it's still art. It's still one
Oh,
of a
yeah.
kind. There's always
Whenever I commission someone, I always give them a reference, and I give them reference that all looks different from each other.
mm,
And I tell them that the more different it is, the more fun it is. So I ask them to just, like they don't have to stick to the design. I tell them basically to keep it halfway recognizable as the character, and then do whatever they want with them. And that usually is good enough. That makes a big difference. There's really only like one or two times that I'm really even thinking of, and I called the artist out. I was like, that looks really similar to this other piece, and he redid it, and I was happy with it in the end. We had a good conversation about it.
yeah, no, it happens. It's funny. Stingray says try searching for Stingray on CAF, and yeah, I'd say he probably has the market cornered on Stingray artwork. For a different reason, but because there just isn't a lot out there. At least there's a fair amount of darkness out on CAF and online. But Royce, I'm glad you reached out to me, man. I mean, we haven't chatted too much in the past, but again, I've seen your CAF gallery for a very long time, and this was good. This was good. It's always good for me to see artwork from books that I'm not very familiar with, right? But the cool thing is the stories around them. Right, you picked really
Yeah.
great pieces tonight that had cool stories about how you got the pieces, and just the whole internship at Top Cow.
Yeah.
Was worth the price of admission tonight.
That's kind of how I chose the pieces, because I have some really amazing pieces, but I can only talk so much about something I bought on eBay, because I thought it was cool. So I try to get the more personal ones that I have a lot of love for.
Well, they were all great, and so listen, this was great. I appreciate it. Everybody in the chat, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. This is a lot of fun. If anybody ever wants to try their hand at being interviewed by yours truly, I'm always happy and open to taking requests. You can email me, bill@comicartfans.com, and we'll see if we can fit it into the schedule sometimes. That's what Royce did over a month ago. What's that?
You reached out to me
initially. That's fine. Well, that's right. We were talking. Well, that's totally right.
And then I got back. I told you I didn't have a space because this room hadn't existed yet. So I said when I had a space, I'd get back to you.
About that. That's why. But okay? So you came back to me when the space was ready. That's what it was. But cool. No, that's awesome, man. But again, everybody, thanks again. And Dueling Dealers tomorrow. No, it's not Dueling Dealers tomorrow. It's actually a art drop make offer show with Mike Berkey. So almost as fun. We'll be doing that tomorrow. But Royce, thanks again, man. Make sure you get something to eat. Don't delay. All right, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks again.